Hi, this is Tawana Freeman with the Black Life Coaches Network. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of BLC TV. Today's guest is a BLC member and the author of a new book called The Book of Purpose, the U Testament. And that guest, or our member, who we're extremely proud of, is TracyMac, also known, and the true name, obviously, is Tracy McNeil. How are you, Tracy?
I am well, Tawana. How are you today?
You know what? I'm doing fantastic. You are the founder of Tracy Mac Coaching Services. You're based out of the near the Raleigh, North Carolina area. So the reason why we're having you on today is because you wrote an article that gained a lot of momentum on the internet, and that article was entitled "Are You Blessing or Cursing Your Life?" And there's so many times when we hear those words, are you blessing or cursing, really are you really adding life, or you taking life away when you open your mouth and talk bad about people or talk bad about yourself? So let's kind of get into some dialogue about some of those key points that you brought up. But really, what was the motivation behind writing the article?
Tawana, thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. And I appreciate BLC and all the great things that you all do for the coaches as well as the community and exposing what life coaching is about. In reference to the article, I was amazed. I'm not an avid moviegoer. And when I was told by several people to go see this particular movie, I was like, okay, I'll still wait for it to come out on DVD. And when I saw the movie, I was not one to have been really impressed with a lot of different things, but I was shocked by those who told me to go see it. And what the movie had in it was a lot of what we call cursing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really offended by it. I know that there's a place for that, and I know that my mouth is not always perfect. But I was really shocked at the things that people allow themselves to pay for and go see, but wouldn't allow
Mm-hmm.
their own friends to say in their presence without being scrutinized.
Yeah.
And so I really look at what is cursing? What is it? Is it just these 5 or 6 words that we say is taboo? We shouldn't say this, that, and the other. Or is it the message that we send in the other words that we don't hold accountable? We let these 5 words be strictly, you shouldn't say this, shouldn't say that, and we give the rest of our language room to move in a
Mm-hmm.
way we don't allow certain ways we say things to be held accountable.
Absolutely. It's an interesting point you brought out right here, and I'm going to interrupt you for half a second because I notice culturally there's certain words in our English language that are used in other languages, certain curse words, obviously, that we use in our English language here in the States, are acceptable culturally in other communities across international waters. So if you can use certain words they use them liberally, but here in the States it's like, I can't believe she said that, she has a potty mouth, or I can't believe she has a sailor's mouth. But what you just said, it really is instructional in that it's not the use of that word, it's the intent behind the word. It's what you're
Yes.
using with the word. It's the energy, the negative energy, or the push that you put behind that type of language that makes the difference or will impact your life in a blessing and as or a cursing. Okay, so continue.
You're so right. You're so right. I will tell you, even in looking up the word cursing, it means to intentionally be venomous and cause harm with words or actions. And not to make light of those words, but I know you have, and I've lived in other countries, and they do use a lot of our words carefree. But I've also seen situations where people use the other words and can be just as venomous and vindictive and harming, and they never said a quote unquote curse word.
Yeah.
And even in our language, we have to get to the point where, even in purpose, as I bring out in the book, when you know your purpose, sometimes words can mean everything or nothing. And the wisdom of purpose will allow us to realize when and what to say. But I think we spend so much time on ridiculing people and judging people for those few words, and we let the rest of them go irresponsibly. A friend of mine, Dr. Andre Pfizer, says, even as it pertains to biblical references, that we tongue tie God's words to a book, and the devil is free to roam. So God can't say anything unless the Bible says it. But then
Mm,
again, anything, the devil can say whatever it wants. And the same thing with these words. We don't hold ourselves responsible for how we even speak to ourselves, because as I say in the book and even in the article,
yeah.
that it's not the on our face we have to be concerned about, it's the mouth of our mind. Those things we say to ourselves that if we were to say them out loud to anyone else, it would be horrible. That's
Yeah.
the way we can
It's
curse
very
our own.
powerful. Yeah, that's very powerful because I'm sitting here, taking an assessment of my own mind and my own mouth, because there are times when I can get extremely stressed and I find myself being so, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I just got to be honest about this. The fact that I have a problem with imperfect action is another video conversation, but but the fact is that I am a recovering perfectionist, and that is a serious problem for a lot of people who understand what that means. You and I are relating right now. So at the end of the day, I find myself really being hard, extremely hard on myself, and when I do that, I tend to have more negative comments or more negative criticisms for myself than I would with anything else around me, right? And so you can look at something or someone else, and then you review it and you can say, okay, that's the best I could give. That's acceptable. However, that's not okay for me. So I put
Mhm.
myself in a different category. And when I do that, I find myself really struggling and having to figure out a way to silence my head when it comes to that level of intense dialogue with myself. I mean, I actually talk to myself and answer myself at the same time, Tracy Mac. I know it's not normal, but for some of us out here,
Yes, it is.
I,
Yes, it
I,
is.
I, I talk to myself and I will answer myself. So I say to myself that I'm going to have to shut up, absolutely shut up. Because,
Hmm.
Tawana, at the end of the day, everything you're saying right now is not benefiting you at all. It's not helping you. You're stuck. You're not moving forward. You're actually just doing nothing. And that is the one thing I cannot stand, in addition to talking to myself and when I'm stressed like that, is wasting time. I can't stand wasting time. And when people waste my time, oh, I'm real mad by then. That's when I really want to cuss somebody out. But at the end of the day, I noticed that about myself. And your article was so powerful in bringing out that mirror so that I can assess that. So please go ahead. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you, but it was so good.
You're saying what's so real. I spent years in the accounting field, and we have a tendency to be very anal and getting that number right. If I was a penny out of balance, I'd stay at work for weeks just to find that penny, and it did happen. But I would browbeat myself the whole time. How come you can't find it? Why didn't you do it? And those things we say to ourselves also begin to permit other people to treat us accordingly because we're used to it. And then sometimes we say things to ourselves we would never say to anyone else, and we don't hold ourselves accountable. How can we be purposeful?
Yeah,
How can we have a quote unquote Christian lifestyle if
yeah,
we don't love ourselves? And a lot of times, especially as women
yeah,
and even as Christians, we get to the point where we put other people first. We'll say good things about other people, and then we'll ride ourselves into a depression
yeah,
mentally about what we
yeah.
say to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I clinical depression, but just that attitude, oh, I can't do anything right. Why didn't I do this? I'm too fat. I'm too short. I'm too tall. My hair isn't right. This, that, and those things continually curse us in our own selves. And like you said, I don't think it's abnormal to ask and answer. But when we don't have that healthy conversation, we can't expect to continually have a healthy conversation externally. And then we expect people to treat us right. So how can we
Yeah,
establish purpose? How can we establish relationship if the one with ourselves is all jacked up? It's
absolutely,
just won't
absolutely.
work. And it begins, we're not our thoughts and we're not our words, but those things bring energy to and from us, and we need to be held accountable to them. And it's not so much as having this little cheerleader pep talk with ourselves when our actions don't line up with our lives. You can't say, I'm doing a good job and you're lazy. That's not going to
Mm-hmm.
fly. You have to begin somewhere with who am I? Why am I here? Which is the reason why I wrote the book. So people can begin to answer those questions. And those things bring about a healthy and holistic relationship with yourself. Because if you want to have a healthy relationship with someone else, you have to know, you have to begin with you, period.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We've been taught to put others first, and we don't want to be selfish with not putting ourselves. We don't want to be narcissistic. But if you don't know how to treat yourself, you cannot tell other people how to treat you. And purpose will provide that lesson plan, point blank.
Hmm. And you know, if you mentioned your book again, the Book of Purpose, the New Testament. And for those of you who are watching, I encourage you to get the book because everything that she's saying in regards to discovering your purpose and learning how to live out and walk your purpose is the beginning of it is the beginning of everything that you do. When you connect with who you are and knowing what you will and will not stand for, it will allow others to give, you give way or you give permission to other people to do whatever it is they feel that they can do liberally with your life and to treat you any kind of way. And so it comes a time when you really say enough is enough of that. And when you make that decision to change the dynamics of your life by telling folk you are no longer allowed to do this because of who I am, and filling in that blank is key. And
Mm-hmm.
so for a lot of Christians, is because of who I am in Christ, or because I am this proud and confident and established woman, that because I am successful, I'm bright, I'm intelligent, all of those things that you are able to however you are just able to describe yourself in the most positive way possible, will then help you stand more erect, as well as get more people to understand, hey, she's not playing, right? So, even when you walk out your purpose after you've identified who you are and you begin to walk it out, you understand also that whatever you put your hand to do as it relates to, again, showing your way of giving to the world, okay, in alignment with your purpose, whatever you put your hands to do, you do that again with more confidence and more assurance, because you know who you are. And so in your article that you wrote, are you blessing or cursing your life? You give 5 key points, and one of them, the first one was be quiet. It's time to shut it off, and the second one was about your confidence. And so, give me a couple more details about the points.
Well, you have to be careful not to say anything to yourself you wouldn't say to someone else in public. I'm serious, because that's where your mind is, where your whole life meets. Everything convenes. Your thoughts, actions, deeds, everything convenes in that. Then you need to create positive mantras. If you've had some negative sayings that have been going on in your head, whether someone else said them to you or you say them to yourself, in order for you to combat that, you need to create positive things to replace that with. So if you've been saying something like, "I'm not good enough," and a mantra, I know in some worlds that seems kind of foreign, but it's just a positive statement. Just a positive statement. So if you say, "I can't do that," yes, I can. And then develop, how come you can? Because I'm educated enough, because I'm willing, because I'm a hard worker, and you can build on that. Then you've also got to be aware of those thoughts. So sometimes we have to slow down and be quiet to see just what our thoughts are. Because in this day and time, Tawana, you and I know, businesswomen, mother, friend, activities we're involved in, we're always on the move, always on the go. So it doesn't take long, but just being quiet long enough to hear, what am I thinking? What do I feel? What do
Mm-hmm.
I know? What do I want? Who am I? And those questions come, but if we don't prepare ourselves and give ourselves time to hear and live the answers, the questions come in vain.
Oh yeah.
And
You
then
know, I gotta interrupt you again, Tracy. Come on now, give me some room. Okay, no, okay. So this is the thing. I get so excited about this stuff. So, I know that was rude, but at the end of the day, I got to get this out before I forget because I don't have my pen and paper. So, you just said something that was like a moment where I had to think, where you were talking about the decisions that you make when you are in a place where you become more sure and you start to identify more with who you are, who you were created to be, the super being that God created you to be. When you really connect with that, all those things that in your life that are garbage, or all those things in your life that are completely contrary to that, they have to be shaken off. Period. They have to
yeah,
be shaken off, because if you cannot live and exist in that space and
mhm.
have everyone around you understand that and accept that, there's a problem that you're just going to end up going right back to old behavior and an old mind. So tell us a little bit about when when you connect with your purpose and it's time to set things in order, because I know you address this in the book, because you have to figure out your surroundings and what to cut off and the directions to move in. Some people end up getting divorces, some people end up quitting jobs, some people end up, relocating to different places in the world, to some place like maybe Hawaii, which I love. But at the end of the day, you do something drastic sometimes. So tell me a little bit about how you talk about that in your book.
When in the book, first of all, Tawana, I define purpose a little differently. Sometimes we define purpose as what we do, but I think purpose is more so who we are, our spiritual identity. Because regardless of who comes and goes, divorce, job, retirement, whatever, as I say in the book, regardless of who comes and goes, your purpose is constant. Who are you as God? What is your spiritual identity now? It may develop, it may intensify, but it doesn't change when the mission changes.
That's right.
And passion is the fuel that we use for purpose. It's not always at 100%. Finances cause it to change, moving, relocating, jobs, people, relationships. And sometimes when we do need to become aware of our purpose and stand in that, we may lose some relationships. Some relationships maybe have to be re-identified, because that's also a recreation process we go through. But it all starts with your identity. Who are you? And then when you realize who you are, the language of how to talk to yourself will automatically evolve. Because if I believe one of my aspects of purpose is peace. If I realize that I come to bring peace, then a particular language will flow with what I do, where I go, how I behave. I also believe laughter and fun. So you're not going to be with me long and not laugh, smile, whether it be at me or I laugh with or at you. It's just going to happen because I believe that's who I am. So that's not going to change regardless of the job I take, regardless of who comes and goes. I believe that identity is going to be all the way through the whole thread of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so words are powerful altogether. So whether you're talking about 5 curse words or the life of your language, everything goes together. A person who's living a purpose-filled life, 5 words is not going to sabotage who they are.
Right.
It just can't, because they've done so many other things. And then even in our English language, sometimes the difference between a bad word and a good word is a consonant or a vowel. You mean to tell me all of that rides on a consonant and a vowel? I mean, I grew up rough. There were friends, back then, everybody raised you in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
And there were some ladies that were devout church mothers. I never heard them curse, but they could talk to you in a way that make you feel
That's right.
small. And not that they were trying to be hateful, but the venom behind, you can't do this, or you shouldn't, or who do you think you are? That type of thing. That was a form of maybe not their intention, but the result of feeling disconnected, of feeling less than. And then you begin to interpret those words and begin to say them to yourself and not realizing where it came from.
Right.
I talk about in the book a client who, she was a little over 40 when she came to me. She was working on her PhD. And Tawana, when she was 7 years old, she had a relative tell her that she was stupid. That lasted one time, that 1 millisecond. She still lived stupid, even though she had a high school diploma, associates, bachelor's, master's, and was working on her doctorate and was earning 6 figures. She still felt stupid because she played that curse in her mind and never allowed the lifestyle she had produced to combat that. So that's how mantras come into play.
Right.
And I had her just initially with coaching, just post-it notes, change all your screensavers, do those simple things, because you've got to roll out and kill those weeds that have grown up with something to have that good soil, that positive things. And she had all the evidence.
Right.
Everything in her life pointed to her not being stupid. So those words, stupid, in the curse word. So it just goes back to how we bless and curse our lives has a lot with us knowing who we are and why we're here.
Right.
And the language we use, because I've worked with sailors and Marines and airmen over the course of my career. And it's sometimes some things that were said in the shop, they be cussing and nothing ever happened. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't venomous. But also, I've seen times where there were just regular words used and the hate that would happen because that works for them. I'm not condoning anything or anyone for how they speak, but some things work for certain people, you know,
Right.
but that all has to do with purpose, where you are, who you are, and why you're here. So, like I
Right.
said, words are purposeful altogether. And not five or so bad ones cursing your life or you
Right.
condemning someone for using those, and no other words are responsible for how we speak them to one.
Absolutely. Tracy Mack, one of the things that you talk about in your book and the New Testament is, the journaling and the purpose of being able to write things out. As you mentioned your client, tell us a little bit about the book and the journal that you have to go with the book. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tawana. And like you said, my foundation is biblical as well. And this stems from the scripture, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Your thinking is communication because you don't think in silence. I mean, your thoughts speak and your words are powerful. And even with the book, I have a journal that goes with the ebook for those that have the ebook, and I have it here with me. It's because they weren't going to be able to write.
Hmm.
I provided writing space in the book because I felt it was important because I posed specific questions. And sometimes when we write things down, we hold ourselves more accountable. I
Hmm.
know it may seem archaic with texting and computers, and we kind of lose the art of handwriting. And I'm not really harping on that. So as long as someone records it, so they can go back and read it. And I call the book the U Testament for the simple fact of we have the Old Testament, we have the New Testament, but as your Bible and mine says, we are living epistles.
Yes.
So what are we living? How are we living the book? How are we the book was translated from Greek and Hebrew. How are we translating it to a now relevant word for our own lives? So when we see something as simple as a book, those authors of the Bible from Genesis through Revelations were inspired by God. They are
Yes.
no different. We are no less than Paul, than
Yes.
any of the writers of the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all
Yes.
of them. So we have the same God in us. So we too can be inspired. So
Yes.
no way am I trying to replace a sacred text. I'm just allowing the person to get in contact with what their sacred text is.
For their
What is
lives. Hmm.
for your
Hmm.
and with so those words being written in book form and me providing the writing space, that was a particular reason for journaling. So they could see, what do I think? What do I know? Because words are so powerful to one,
Yes.
not only speak them, but when we speak purpose, I say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm good at or not. Then those words say, yes, we agree. If I want to be a life coach, then those words say, okay, yes, we need a certification.
Yes.
Yes, we need a business plan. Those words hold me accountable for the next thing. Our words work for us.
There you go. So below this video, you will see links not only to purchase her book, but also to kind of, scroll around and see what other services that she has to offer. Not only is she a life coach working one-on-one with an individual and helping them with their understanding their purpose and helping them transition through certain aspects of their life, she's also a consultant to corporate America in this area of business that you need to kind of figure out. But I don't want to peek it. You just go right onto her website and find out more about her and literally take some time and walk around her website so that you can see all the wonderful things that she's up to. Thank you for your time, Tracy. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you and BLC. But I think purpose is more so who we are, our spiritual identity. Because regardless of who comes and goes, divorce, job, retirement, whatever, as I say in the book, regardless of who comes and goes, your purpose is constant. Who are you as God? What is your spiritual identity now? It may develop, it may intensify, but it doesn't change when the mission changes.
That's right.
And passion is the fuel that we use for purpose. It's not always